This is the Business Value Exchange, and I'm Helen Beckett, the editor. Very pleased to have me today, Cris Beswick, who is a guest lecturer at many business schools, including Cranfield University, and is the founder of the innovation company Future Shapers. Hi, Cris.
Hi.
I'm intrigued by this conversation today because we're talking about everyday innovation. And in my mind, in the past, it's been dominated by big multi-million pound spend, sometimes projects on incubators, hiring the best brains on the planet, putting them in a room, keeping everything in isolation. But this seems to be the opposite. Can you talk us through everyday innovation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, the examples that you've just cited there, the R&D departments and the incubators, you know, that was innovation of old. And what we've seen and what the whole concept of everyday innovation outlines is we now need to build organizations where innovation happens every day, but it also happens and comes from everybody in an organization. So, you know, we remove just doing the big radical, you know, game-changing stuff that comes out of the R&D departments or the incubators, and we start to build capability for innovation across the organization. And fundamentally, that's what everyday innovation is about.
And the yields are pretty big, aren't they? These were highlighted in a recent WASOCA report, and I think it mentioned that there's 18,000 opportunities are missed every year by UK PLC because they're not harnessing the efforts of their staff. Can you just talk about how you do harness everyone? Is it about digital tools or is it about a cultural issue?
Yeah, well, digital tools are part of it. So, you know, in order to really harness everyday innovation, and the language we use is in order, you know, to build a culture of innovation. Digital tools are part of it. So online collaboration platforms, you know, enterprise-wide, you know, idea sharing tools, etc. They're part of a whole suite of things that help drive innovation. But fundamentally, if you need to build a culture of innovation, then you have to get a few core things right. One of those is you have to look at it strategically. The second is there has to be real leadership, sponsorship, and leadership drive for innovation. And the WASOCA report that you mentioned has highlighted that, you know, nearly 50% of employees don't believe that innovation is embedded within their senior team. And that makes the third thing that we look at, how we build a culture of innovation, you know, which is really the important part. It makes that really difficult because, you know, if the leadership team aren't driving innovation, it makes it really difficult to build it into an organization's culture.
That's really interesting. We'll come back to that, the leadership implications in a minute. But I just wonder, first of all, can you cite a few? What are some of the examples of innovation that can emerge if all these things are in place? What can happen?
Well, one of the things we see, you know, back to the R&D and the, you know, the innovation labs and things like that, the incubators that you mentioned earlier, they typically focus on what we call contextual innovation. So solving specific problems, so specific challenges. What we see when we build a culture of innovation is we get a whole range of different types of innovation, from small incremental changes right up to those big radical ideas and solutions. But it's the gap in the middle. It's something we call differentiated innovation. And it's what happens in the middle that's really, really exciting, because there are ideas and solutions in innovation that come from the very heart of organizations, from all the employees.
So give us some examples. What are they?
Okay, I mean, a great example. Yeah, a great example are things that most customers and we don't see behind the scenes. So real improvements to logistics or processing or you know, how things happen behind the scenes of organizations that we never see, but that really impact the bottom line, right through to things like, you know, a great retail example is Waitrose self-scan, which none of the other retailers seem to have taken up, but you know, that's a great experience for the customer. It creates real efficiency for Waitrose, and it allows you as a customer to actually shop on your own. But great cost saving for the retailer, brilliant experience for the customer. That's a great example of differentiated innovation.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. You talked earlier about embedding it into the leadership, and again, there's also a knock-on effect, another value that can be realised, and that is the employment proposition of a company. If you're seen as an innovative kind of place where you're listened to and
Yeah.
ideas are taken seriously, you might be more likely to go and join them. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we see things like, the top 100 companies to work for, and things like that a lot of companies strive for. And the innovation's a real driver. It's a real attractor of talent. It's a real, if companies build that culture of innovation, it builds brilliant places to work. And as an employee, who wouldn't want to go and work for a company like that, that's driving forward, that's innovation led? So just the very fact that you are doing innovation and you might be deriving return on investment from that, you're also behind the scenes reducing your employee turnover, you're reducing your recruitment costs, so there's huge benefits to building innovation into organizational culture.
Definitely, and attracting the best and the brightest. So
Absolutely.
Cris Beswick, thanks so much for talking about innovation where it's not for the few but for the many. Many thanks.
Thank you.